Let's begin with statues. They're how society honors people from history and where teenagers meet at the park to buy drugs. Since the Black Lives Matter protests began in the wake of George Floyd's murder, protesters have been tearing down Confederate memorials around the country. And now, so many of those statues have been pulled down that people are turning their sights on other historical figures.
In Portland, protesters lighting on fire the monument of George Washington before pulling it down. The nation's first president face down and covered in graffiti because activists say he was a slave owner. Demonstrators targeting Ulysses S. Grant, who led the Union Army against the Confederacy but was said to have owned a slave. And Francis Scott Key, who wrote the lyrics to the Star-Spangled Banner but was also a slave owner.
The American Museum of Natural History in New York City announced that it will remove a statue of President Theodore Roosevelt from its front steps. The statue features him on a horse with a Native American man and an African American man standing on either side of him.
Ooh-wee! This is not a good time to be a statue. Because at first, it felt like only the Confederate statues were coming down. But now it seems like they're just tearing down anything that doesn't move. I'm so afraid that now when I'm waiting to cross the street, I keep moving just so that no one comes in and tries to rip off my head. I will be honest though. The museum saying they're going to take down the Teddy Roosevelt statue, it actually makes sense to me. Because as someone who lives in New York, I've walked past that statue so many times. And every time I've looked at it, I've thought, wow, that's an amazing statue that is also very problematic. Although I bet in the 1930s, that was considered a super woke statue. The sculpture was probably like, look at that. I put an Indian and a Negro being led by our white savior. I'm the most liberal guy in New York City. Now look, that statue was originally supposed to symbolize Roosevelt's friendship with other races. But, I mean, the imagery's not good. Like, if you're such good friends, why don't you let them up on your horse? Or at the very least, give them something to ride. Now, one reason that these protests are still going strong is because racism is also going strong. I mean, just look at what happened after NASCAR banned the Confederate flag.
A disturbing discovery, a noose found in the garage stall of Bubba Wallace at the Talladega Superspeedway in Lincoln, Alabama on Sunday. Less than 2 weeks after Wallace, who's NASCAR's only full-time black driver, successfully convinced the stock car racing series to ban the Confederate flag at its tracks and facilities. Wallace responding overnight, writing, "Today's despicable act of racism and hatred leaves me incredibly saddened and serves as a painful reminder of how much further we have to go as a society and how persistent we must be in the fight against racism." NASCAR releasing a statement reading in part, "We've launched an immediate investigation and will do everything we can to identify the person responsible and eliminate them from the sport."
Man, this is such bullshit. Bubba Wallace spoke out against racism, and clearly someone wanted to send a reminder of what can happen to black people who don't know their place. And you know, because NASCAR has so many Confederate flag fans, this is something that might not stop for Bubba. Like, I can tell you fans are going to be saying horrible things. People are going to be putting up signs. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Bubba starts getting pulled over during the race. Sir, we've been getting some calls that you've been circling this neighborhood for a couple of hours. Can I see your license and registration? I will say this though. As much as this story is infuriating, it also is wonderful how these racists expose themselves. Because all these Confederate flag-loving people always say the same thing. This has nothing to do with race. The flag is about heritage. It has nothing to do with racism. But as soon as a black man stands up against the Confederate flag, the first thing they do is respond with racism. Like they say, the flag is just about Southern heritage. But nobody showed up to that garage with a Georgia peach cobbler. No one didn't show up there like, well, I'm going to teach you a lesson about disrespecting Southern heritage. You want one slice or two?